Welcome to the 148th episode of the Jami Dulaney Plant-Based Wellness Podcast. My name is Jami Dulaney, and I'm your host. I'm a plant-based cardiologist and endurance athlete living in Southwest Florida. Today I have a different format. I gave a lecture this evening to a group of people that are starting a plant-based journey. Two of my members live in a golf course community, and they're looking to find like-minded individuals so that they can go on the plant-based journey to health and wellness with some like-minded friends. So I was invited to their group today to give a little talk, and I was just going to share you our experience. So I'm going to let this go unedited, and I hope you enjoy it. Thanks for listening. So obviously I am Bob and Judy's physician, but I also do a podcast, and it's called the Jami Dulaney Plant-Based Wellness Podcast, and I typically record on Thursday evenings. So welcome to the Jami Dulaney Plant-Based Wellness Podcast. You all are out. I changed my practice. I've been a cardiologist in Port Charlotte since 1999 I came to town. Before that, I was at West Virginia University, and then Venice, and then finally at Port Charlotte. But I became a cardiologist largely because I needed to fix myself because of a terrible family history. My mother's mother died at 57 of heart failure and diabetes. Her father died at 47 of a massive heart attack. My father's mother died of diabetes and heart attack. So diabetes, heart disease was rampant in my family. And even as a young kid, I remember riding to the hospital with my one grandmother in heart failure. So it kind of made a lasting impression, and add in a little bit of science stuff, and that's what got me into cardiology. And the thought was that how do you best manage people to keep them from dying of cardiovascular disease? And the traditional practice is to be able to diagnose people in early detection and treating people. And so we know the risk factors for cardiovascular disease are smoking, so don't smoke. Being a man, now you can change that, but and age over 55, women start to catch up. Diabetes, hypertension, high cholesterol. So the thought process is that if you take your blood pressure medicine, you take your cholesterol medication, and you eat a healthy diet, whatever that might be, and exercise, whatever that might be, that you won't have heart disease. Well, I never ran out of business, so obviously those things don't necessarily work 100% of the time. And I prided myself in being able to titrate cholesterol medicines to a cholesterol less than 200, and diabetes to a glucose around 100, and blood pressure medicines to a less than 120, and get people on the medicines that the American Heart Association says is good protocol and what's the standard of care. Yet people still have vascular disease and progression. So nobody ever really, when you say hypertension, people think the diagnosis code is essential hypertension, meaning it just happens. Most people think they have cardiovascular disease because they have a bad family history, and there's nothing you can do. You're sort of a victim of your genes, so to speak. And when you get these illnesses, you take medications and band-aid them up and hope for the best. And we don't ever ask why. We just assume it's your genes, your family history, take your meds, go on about your good luck to you. But that doesn't necessarily work. And the way I ran into an alternative, I was in the heart catheterization laboratory one day. I was getting ready to do a procedure, and I saw the tech eating this giant bowl of salad. And literally, the big serving bowl under her arm here eating this salad. She was a skinny thing, and it's like, what are you doing? And, she said, I'm a vegan, and I'm from West Virginia. There aren't vegans there. And I was like, what's a vegan? She said, well, I don't eat animal products. You should read this book, John Robbins, Diet for a New America. The guy, Baskin and Robbins, his son. So I got the book, and I went home, and it was kind of a page-turner for me because they talked about all the things that I didn't know. I had no idea about factory farming. I had no idea that, dairy could be so bad for you and cancer causing, these various different things. And by the time I was done reading the book, I decided I was a vegan. So I promptly, went out of my study and to the family and said, we're now vegans. And they said, you're a vegan, but we're not a vegan. And so that was kind of how it started. And so I would hand patients either Dean Ornish's book or recommend Diet for a New America. You should give this a read. And when I would hand Dean Ornish's book to people, his first book, I would say, it's really hard. You probably won't be able to do it, but if you can, it works. And that would be about all I gave them.
that meant with the scientific background that Ornish kind of had done research?
Right. So this is, it's like this book, this works as far as, I believe that he's had success. I mean, he's shown that with heart catheterizations you can reverse disease, but this is not easy. But if you want to give it a shot, right. And kind of let it go at that. And I was running one day. One of the things I took up to try to outrun cardiovascular disease was running. So I'm out running, and I was listening to a podcast, and they were talking about this new movie, Forks Over Knives. And, where this doctor took people, and he showed them, his wife, they showed him how to cook, and they called him all the day, and he took an interest. And it really, he resonated with me in that I come from a background of teachers in my family. And my aunt always used to say that if somebody doesn't learn, it's not because they can't learn, it's because of the way you're presenting it. So I always took that to heart with my patients, that if somebody didn't understand what I was talking about, it wasn't them, it was how I was presenting it, and I need to fix that. So when I heard him talk about this, he's like, if you just take time with people, which we always did in our practice, they'll see they can make their own decision, and we have great success. So I was like, okay, I know what I want to do. I want to try this in my practice. And so I started having a group, 16 people in my office in the evening, of people that I would kind of shame that were my regular cardiac patients into coming to this class, and I made them pay me $25, so I figured if they paid $25 up front, they'd show up. Otherwise they wouldn't show. And
I should have thought of that.
Yeah. So they showed up, and we had, we got 16 chairs at a garage sale, and I used a whiteboard, and I made something on a fold-up table, something simple, and kind of like the way you started here. And all of a sudden, I started seeing, some of this. Some guy that was having chest pain and went away. Somebody was having claudication in his legs, went away. Neuropathy started to go away. I was starting to take these people off their medications. Their cholesterol was coming down. Their blood pressure was coming down. It's like, my God, this works. And so we went from one class on a Thursday evening to we did 2 classes on a Thursday evening. And then we put another class in. We outgrew our 16 chairs, moved to the, we moved up to the, I'm blocking on the name, but the Chamber of Commerce, where they had a bigger room, and did it from there. And the only complaint I had was when the class was over, people didn't have any support, and they kind of fall off the wagon, so to speak. So we decided to change the practice at that point so that everybody in the practice would have an opportunity to come to nutrition class where I would make something and they would eat it, and we would discuss the why, because nobody's ever going to do anything unless you know why. And so the idea was to present people with an alternative to traditional cardiovascular care. And if you want to try that, great. We'll help you learn it. If you don't have to. That became, and it became a lot more fun to treat people that actually wanted to be involved in their own medical care, as opposed to, I'm here, fix me. I have a tea time at 4:45. Let's get out of here. So it became people actually seeking the practice out that didn't want to be said or told, take this medicine, I'll see you, but I have a question, never mind, maybe next visit. And so that's actually how the practice has evolved. And we started, I think it was 2017, 2016 is when the practice went full-time to a wellness-type practice. And since it's evolved, at one point before COVID, we were having 3 classes. So we had a beginner class, an intermediate class, and an advanced class. It kind of shrunk down with COVID. We went online. Zoom became involved, so we've done that. But most of the time in class, we kind of talk about the why. And it really has made the practice of medicine much more interesting to me, because we get to talk about the why, and I get to see it work. And, I can tell you success stories, and I can tell you, I've had a great success, with somebody that couldn't walk 25 yards and back walking 3 miles. I've also had a failure where a gentleman was doing great, and with the complications of everybody in his family, couldn't sustain it and end up, regressing and actually dying as a young person of cardiovascular disease. So it's not a fix that you can do 2 months of and go back to your old ways and you'll still be good. It's a lifestyle, but the idea is to make it such that it's a lifestyle that you enjoy. I always tell people, I'm the first one, that I enjoy every meal. I like to eat, I like to cook, I look forward to my meals. I don't feel like I'm in dietary jail, so to speak. I don't feel like, I'm having to live this life, poor me, I have bad genes, I've got to do this or else. And I think that's very important. I think a lot of times with traditional dietary plans, Weight Watchers, Jenny Craig's, those kind of things, you do it for weight loss, thinking that once the weight is gone, then you can kind of go back to your old ways, so to speak, or maybe a little bit changed, but for the most part, everybody drifts back until they, hit that point, and then they kind of go back and have to do a reset. There's a big difference between weight loss and nutrition. Weight loss meaning, I heard somebody talk about why do people do something? Why do you go to the gym, for instance? And for the most part, people go to the gym to look better, right? Feel better, yes, but everybody wants to look better. Nobody wants to, it's like, I'm hoping I look worse after this. I'm hoping, and so no matter what, most people would like to look and feel better. And so first thing that usually comes to mind in most people is some weight loss. That's typically something that, so marketing is always, you can lose weight and feel better and still eat chocolate cake. And of course you can eat a piece that's big that, so there's always a catch. But nutrition is something that when I look at it as being health. And if you want to, why do people age? Why don't 15-year-olds have high cholesterol and hypertension? Why do you not have a stroke until you're older? Why do most people get, why do children get cancer? If it's your genes, then why do your genes not kick in till you're 65? How did they know? It's like expiration date did you come marked with? Or is there something you do? The example that I'll give is, my mom's family history. I told you that her mother died at 57, her dad died at 48. She had 3 brothers that died in their 60s. My mom turns 90 next month. Did she get the good genes out of all the other bad genes? No, she took high blood pressure medicine and antacid pills from her 30s and cholesterol medicine, but she changed her nutrition, at 75. And I believe that is what made the difference in her cognition. So I think that she's working on the genes. My grandmothers all had diabetes when they were in their 50s. I'm 60. I don't have it yet. I know I have the genes. I know at 150 pounds I could have the diabetes. Pretty easy. Pretty much would bet everything I had on it. I could show you how to get diabetes pretty quick. But how do you change that with nutrition? And what it all comes down to, whether it's cancer, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, aging in general, it's our way that we metabolize energy. So we have these. I put up in class a picture of a garage. When you're born, you have a new garage in your cells, right? It's nice and clean, like when you first moved into your house here at Riverwood, nothing's in it, looked great, it's all white, shelves, everything's pristine, and then 25 years later, there's stuff falling off the shelves, you got all the knickknacks from up north, you're going to need a dumpster to clean it out. So that's your body, right? That's your body on aging. We have, a Big Mac at 16, you got a little bit of metabolic waste, you have some tuna fish, you got a little mercury you got to do something with, you've got Christmas cookies, you got a little metabolic waste there. Over the years, toxins that are, that are in, different chemicals that are in your chips, you got to do something with those. Gradually, we put those in our cells, and gradually the cell can't keep itself clean and can't metabolize energy. And when we can't take food and turn it into energy, basically those things called mitochondria, if anybody heard of those organelles, then bad things start to happen. So once you can't metabolize energy, then we're storing more as fat. So we're making the cell fuller of junk quicker. We don't have enough energy to move. Our parts don't have enough energy. Our hearts can't beat effectively. Our brains don't beat it. Everything starts to not work as it should, and we start getting disease. And you can, so our genes play a role in what might get us first, so to speak, but not necessarily so. And that's kind of all a new field. When I went to medical school, it was you use these medications for blood pressure, use these medicines for cholesterol, you do this procedure. We're going to do a stress test on you every year so that we can catch your coronary artery disease early. We're going to do your ultrasound of your carotids every year so we catch it before you have a stroke. So I'm going to watch it as it closes shut. And hopefully when it's, time for your yearly carotid, hopefully it won't be, so your body knows that you're going to get your ultrasound in June, so it's not going to close in May, it's going to close in, we're going to find this in June. It's not really good thinking, because most of the things that we try to look for, we've never, why not just do a CAT scan on everybody every year? Or why not, and a lot of practices we're going to do, you're 55, we're going to do a stress test on you every year, because we need to see. But we can't pick up those lesions. Because the one that might get you tonight, I saw a woman that's 50 years old today in the office, and she had her heart attack 2018. And she had a family history. She says, maybe if I would have had a stress test, I would have caught it. It's like, no. because, it turns out she started exercising and she wanted to lose some weight, so she went on a ketogenic diet. Then she had a heart attack.
Wow.
Kind of like Bob Harper, with the Biggest Loser. He started putting butter in his coffee and he had the big one despite being, so you look good on the outside. It's like my grandfather's 1960 Ford, that the frame rusted on the inside. The outside looked really pretty, but the frame rusted on the inside. We can rust on the inside and you can't really detect it, so to speak. So these lesions that we find, now the big, calcium scores, right? People are going out and get calcium CTs to see whether or not they have calcium in your arteries. And it's like, okay, you flunked your test. You got calcium in your arteries. You've got vascular disease. Now we should do another test. Now we should do another test. And, but I feel fine. Will these tests make me live longer or live better? Well, no, but we'll find something. But the treatment itself may kill you, right? So if I perforate your artery when I'm doing a heart catheterization and cause a heart attack, and you weren't having any symptoms before, now I've actually made you a patient, perhaps. We now know that, and it's very interesting, running, exercise, people that do long distance running tend to have less cardiovascular. There's no upper limit of exercise that people start to do worse with. All right, so starters. So, American Heart Association says do 150 minutes a week. But if you do 5,000 minutes a week, you're not going to die because you did too much exercise. So we know it just keeps getting better, and there's not really a place that, unless you break your neck or something, that is going to make it worse. But we also know that when you do calcium CT scores on ultra distance runners, people that are running these long, crazy distances, they have more calcium in their arteries than other people their age. It's like, well, that's just great. You're doing all this running, and now you're going to die of cardiovascular disease because you're causing a problem. But it turns out they don't. They don't have the events. They just have the calcium. A study came out this week that actually looked at people that have healing arteries, and guess what? They calcify. So if you have calcification in your arteries, those aren't going to be the ones that hurt you. They're stable. They've got a calcify. They got a cap on them. But if you have a soft, say if you have saran wrap on top of your plaque, then the cholesterol can pop through, and then that's what causes a hole in the clot, and that's causes the big one. So we can't pick up the 20%ers that are soft, that are going to rupture tomorrow and cause the big one. We can pick up the ones that are stable, and we say, well, those are 80%. We need to put a stent in there. But it doesn't make you live longer or better if you're not having symptoms. And so we're finding that with more and more treatments in reality. So, meniscus surgery, everybody's like, oh, your meniscus sore, we got to fix that. We'll put that and make that better. Turns out people just have as many knee replacements with a meniscus, probably a little bit more when you have your meniscus repaired. You're probably more down the road. So what we do now doesn't necessarily predict our future because there's so many things that can interact. So back it all up, so we started to teach the plant-based nutrition in the office. Now, how many people in here are dabbling in plant-based nutrition or feel like that they're plant-based?
Somewhere in there. Pretty good.
We're plant-based.
Dabbling, plant-based, maybe, thinking about it. What is it? What is it? Can I say what it is? What is the difference? Oh, that's interesting. Can I say what the difference is between a vegan and a plant-based person? Is that a fair question? So a vegan is more of an ethical statement that you don't eat or use animal products. So I wouldn't use cosmetic that was tested on animals. I wouldn't wear leather shoes. And I would eat things that weren't made of animals, but it could be a processed food, like a Beyond Burger or pretend whatever, pepperoni made out of something else or something like that. It's okay, but I'm going to try to avoid animal products to the best of my ability. Well, a lot of those things, if you're going to try to make like Beyond Meat hamburgers, the idea was to make a hamburger that just tasted like a hamburger. Well, if you make something that's just like the thing that you're trying not to eat, it's going to have all the same ingredients for the most part, except it didn't come from an animal. So all the same amount of sodium, has the same amount of fat, and there's a bunch of some other stuff to make it, look and taste like it. It may not have cholesterol because only animal products have cholesterol, but chances are it's not going to be healthy either. So it's not a health food, it's just not an animal food. On the other hand, if I'm going to eat plant-based, I'm going to try to eat foods that limit my metabolic waste, that allow my body to kind of clear out the garage, so to speak. So the instance would be if I went, say I was eating salmon, because everybody thinks that salmon is a good food. So a piece of salmon versus a kale salad. So the salmon has protein, so does the kale. Salmon has all the non-essential amino acids, so does the kale. Not the same percentage, so it's not a complete protein, but it has all the essential amino acids. A salmon has cholesterol. Plants don't have cholesterol. Salmon has saturated fat. There's very little, if any, in kale. Salmon is floating around in the water till it got to be big enough to harvest, so it stored all the things it swam around in its fat, because it's a fatty fish, so dioxins, PCBs, mercury, whatever it happened to swim in, whatever they gave it to make it have a pretty color in the grocery store, so that goes all into the salmon. So I gotta do something with that metabolic waste. On the other hand, if I had, a kale salad, I'm going to use that fiber to help my gut microbes. I'm going to digest that kale and use the nutrients, and the byproduct is going to be basically carbon dioxide that I exhale and oxygen or in water that I pee out, and the energy that I convert into some sort of muscle mass. Now you say you can't live on kale alone, so I have to have something with it, right? It's like that's when I you have to have something. So obviously I have to make the plate whole, and so if you imagine the plate. From the American Dietetic Association, they have you have the plate with the a protein. We don't want to talk about animals, we call it a protein now. And you have a vegetable and a grain, and dairy is in the American Dietary Association. I got that confused because they are sponsored by the dairy industry. And then they'll say limit the simple sugars or whatever. That's kind of the plate. Well, my plant-based plate would be, my greens, because those greens are one of the most nutritious things that I could eat. That kale is going to dilate my blood vessels. It's going to give me omega-3 fatty acids, so it's going to give me fiber. So that's really important to have on my plate every day. Some sort of green, doesn't have to be kale. And then I'm going to have, spinach, right? And then I'm going to have some other vegetables. And then I'm going to have a starch of sort, potato or rice or grain, so quinoa, farro, rice, or a sweet potato or white potato, and then I'm going to have fruit, and that's pretty much going to be. And I have to have, and my protein source will be beans or tofu, and that pretty much makes my plate. If I want to lower the energy of that plate towards weight loss, then I would shrink the portion of grains and beans perhaps a little bit. If I have a lot of inflammation in my body, I'm going to want to increase those vegetables that have anti-inflammatory type properties, the kale, the colorful vegetables, and so forth. If I have chest pain or vascular disease, I'm certainly going to want to have those greens in, which are kale, spinach, broccoli, cauliflower, arugula, broccolini, any kind of cabbage. Those are going to be when I want to get 6 cups a day in if I have vascular. So we fine-tune people's plates to what we're trying to achieve with them at the point they're in. My grandson's 2.5, so he's never had anything but a plant. He's in the 95th percentile for height and weight, and we're just trying to get calories. We're trying to get calories and nutrients in him, so a very colorful plate, as long as he's getting enough that he's growing. So he needs more calories, and he needs a little bit more fat. So children, because they're still developing, need some of those good fats, the avocados, maybe a little bit of oil, but tofu has a little bit more fat. Some of the more fatty foods that are, maybe a little bit more nuts and seeds. But we're not growing, and if we're depending on our energy level, if we eat too much energy, we're just going to store it as fat. So there's no need to take in excessive amounts of fat because we're just going to store it. When people say essential fatty acids, don't you need the good fat? You need about 0.05% of your calories is good fat, so it's really easy to get. So you don't need to look for, nobody's fat deficient. At least I haven't met anybody just yet. Even a Kenyan has enough fat in them to run a marathon, so to speak. So nobody's fat deficient. Nobody's protein deficient. Everybody worries about being not enough of here in the United States, which is kind of funny. So that's kind of it in a nutshell as far as how we practice. So we individualize things depending on the person. Meet people where they are. We have people that aren't plant-based in the practice. We try to shove them that way a little bit, but we don't kick them out or shun them. But different people have to hear things at their own pace. And sometimes, we have a member in the practice that when they were up north in Boston, they had some vascular disease. They went to the doctor. He said, "You should watch the movie Forks Over Knives. Here to read the book." They brought the book home. They put it on the coffee table. They never opened it up. They came down here and they stumbled into some lecture I was getting, and they heard that word again, Forks Over Knives. It's like, you know what, we better read the book. And then one thing led to another, and that gentleman actually did his first marathon, actually his second marathon this year with us at 80. So it takes sometimes hearing things different ways to click in. The lady that I saw today, has, she's got a very busy life. She works full time. She has a disabled son. She has a younger son. They're running a business. They're homeschooling their kids. I said, can you think of something else to do? And she's trying to get food on the table at night. And it's like, so this woman's it's not a 2-hour dinner that she needs to be preparing at night. How do you get food on the table in 30 minutes that everybody will eat, nobody will whine over? And that's healthy. And that's a real thing, right? Because if you've got to read a 20-page recipe every time you go to cook, that's going to get old really quick. It's like trying to translate the newspaper, out of Japanese into into English every morning. Who's going to do it? Maybe one day it's fun, but the second day, I just look at the pictures.
Plus the planning.
The planning, right? And how do you get things? My grandmother was always good at. We talk about making something out of nothing. And looking in the refrigerator and making a meal. But not everybody's like that. How do you put things together and make it so that it tastes? And if you have a spouse that you put some dinner on the table that you worked really hard for, and they just tofu. I don't like the texture. How many times are you going to try that? It's not really worth it. The funniest thing was in the practice when we first started to change and wanted to do that early nutrition class, I felt the need to give this talk to everybody that walked in the office during the day. So about 10, 15 patients a day, depending. I try to do this 10 to 15 times, and I would be hoarse by the end of the day. But the funniest part, if somebody came in with their spouse, and you can always tell the one that did the cooking, they kind of burled up like this, and they knew the person that, they've been on 20 bad diets before, they're not going to do this either, and they're going to put me through misery, and I certainly didn't come to Florida to cook, and you see that, getting all, sort of straight up, and it's like there's problems here. But I've also seen people come in that I had this husband and wife come in, and literally they had the worst diet that I've ever seen in my life. They it was bacon and eggs for breakfast, followed by chicken wings at lunch. That they bought chicken wings at Publix and put a little bit more barbecue sauce on them and ate them for lunch. And then it was like another combination of steak or more of the same thing, ham at night. The guy had a heart attack, he had diabetes, the sugars were 300 or 400. Surprise! And I'm thinking, her thought of cooking would be maybe that was it. Sawing something out and putting something on the grill. And it's like, I was almost ready to give them their money back. And I thought, because this is just, it's not going to work. And they said, no, he's like, something's got to change here. And I gave him, 2 or 3 things to eat, basically. Can you try this? And they did it, and he has. And he's, came off of 100 units of insulin. He's now on 4 units of insulin. He's off most of his cardiac meds. He's down 60 pounds. But I wouldn't have put $1 that he was actually going to do it. I didn't think they could. Do you know what I mean? I didn't think that it would be, something that, but, if you want, it's amazing if you want something, you can do it. It's just if you want something or not. And if you think it's actually going to help.
When someone starts going into this lifestyle, I know sometimes I had reactions. And can you talk to that? Or?
Yeah, so when I went to medical school, the bacteria in your colon was non-existent. Nobody talked about it. The only thing your colon was for was like the last way out, right? So you ate fiber and you're either constipated or you're not constipated, and that's where cancer started. But other than that, that was the only thing your colon was for. It was just waiting for somebody to resect at some point, because it's probably something's going to happen to it. But we know that, we have more genetic material in the bacteria that lives in our colon than we do our own genetic material. And our immune system, the headquarters is basically in our colon. So what you feed the bacteria that lives in your colon really has to do with your immune system function, whether it's too much, too less, your cravings, and the type of bacteria that you have. So if you've been feeding chicken wings and bacon and eggs and growing a certain type of bacteria, then all of a sudden, if you have, white beans and a head of kale, you can only imagine what's going to happen. And so people, people don't realize, there's some ads, if you've ever scrolled down on Facebook sometimes, you'll see these ads where people, they'll say, show a picture of a colon and, she lost 30 pounds of feces, doing this particular diet. But it's not that uncommon for people to be carrying around quite a bit of waste in them because you're constipated all the time. People don't even know that they're constipated. You know what I mean? It's just, you if you read, the Wall Street Journal and you have a little bit of a bowel movement every other day, then everything's a go. That's pretty what maybe some people think, or you take certain things to get, and so people tend to be plugged up, so to speak, and they just walk around that way. And if you start the beans and the kale, you can only imagine what, might happen. It's like they call me up, it's like, I got massive diarrhea. This is not working. It's like, no, you're actually having a normal bowel movement. You should poop like a cow, not a horse. But it's true. You shouldn't have to read a novel to go to the bathroom. Unless you really it's a good novel, I guess. Maybe. I have to say, sometimes to get away from my animals, I kind of go high a little bit. It's like, so you can have some certain reactions. I tease, chewing is a big issue. So, almost every kid needs braces today.
Right.
And we have the same amount of teeth as we did 10,000 years ago, but now they don't fit in our jaw. And it's because kids don't chew. They never develop their jaw. They get weaned to half of them are bottle fed, so they don't even have to work for that, but then they're put on soft food. So they never chew. And then they go to Big Macs and pizza, and you don't really can gum all that stuff. You don't really need to chew. They don't eat an apple or chew any, other than, and so the jaw never develops. And so they just pull the teeth. The palate never develops. So there's so many things that we just assume, kids' meals. None of us experience kids' meals. But now kids only experience kids' meals. Because people think that's what a kid's supposed to have, which is just terrible food. And so how can they ever develop? They don't get any fiber, they're constipated. And how are they going to ever have a palate for broccoli if you've been giving them hot dogs and mac and cheese?
Well, like the things that they squirt into their mouth.
Yeah, the different,
which have probably a lot of
sugar. Oh, it has to be, sugar. So it is just, we've made convenience. Somebody talks about the obesity. In 1980, all of a sudden the obesity curve went straight up. And it's like, what happened? What happened? And basically TV dinners happened, fast foods happened, calorically dense things happened. People move, there's a gym on every corner, but there's also a fast food on every corner. So you can, so it's very difficult. The caloric density of the food is so much, people can't, you can't metabolize it. From age 0 to 20, you have a really high metabolism, you're growing. You're making bone, brain, muscle, height, whatever. From 20 to 60, it stays steady. A lot of people say menopause, I gained 30 pounds after menopause, and it must have been menopause that caused the problem. So take this hormone, take this, take that, take this. It's not. 20 to 60, same metabolism. After 60, it starts to fall off. What happens at 45, 50? You don't have to cook anymore, you get to go out more. Kids leave the house, you get to go out more, a little bit more sedentary. Life starts to slow down just a little bit or different, and people put on the weight. And the next thing you know, you wake up, and because 100 calories extra a day times 360 days is a lot of calories. 10 calories, an extra lifesaver a day is a pound a year. 10 calories, 365 days a year is 3,000 calories, and that's a pound. So it doesn't take much, and especially when you go get the chicken wings in the bag that were fried at the factory and dipped in something, and then you put them, then Arby's puts them in the frying thing and puts a little bit more oil in them, right? So you're kind of doomed when you rely on people to make your food for you sometimes. I told some lady, she said, is it okay if I buy the bags of vegetables that are already cut up at Publix? In the produce, the fresh vegetables. She said, well, no. She said, why? And it's like, because you need to stand up and cut those things. Because if you stand up and cut those things, you're actually standing up and moving a little bit. You have a day job that you just sat like this for 8 hours. What's the difference between going out to dinner and making your own? So you get your car, you drive to the restaurant, you park as close as you can. Right. You walk in, because you got your good shoes on, so you walk in, you sit down, and you eat. You get a bigger portion than you would have at home. You're going to order an appetizer because you had to wait. Right. The bread keeps coming, so you're going to have a drink, because, come on, we're here to socialize. And the food is more greasy, and it's, more calorie dense. And then you eat it, and, some people are really, it's like, I have a doggy bag, I didn't eat it all. I saved half of the dog. They bring it back with them in the car right by the door, and they drive home. But if you had to make it, you had to drive to Publix. You got to walk in, you got to put it in your cart, check out, come home, unload it, cut it up, cook it, eat it, do the dishes. So you burn, not only did you eat less, but you burned more. You actually moved, your body was actually moving a little bit. So that could be a swing of 800 or 900 calories, just that meal. So you do that, I Dr. Esselstyn from Forks Over Knives. I have a funny story. So when I first started trying to convince people to do this, I had a friend of the family who was an attorney who was significantly overweight. And he had had a heart attack, and he swore he was doing this. And he'd come in and he didn't lose a half a pound. The same guy, and he swore. They went to an Italian restaurant, but he went to the kitchen and they did it right. And he didn't vary, he was eating everything right. Still have a little chest pain, but, again, no oil, not eating. I don't know why I can't lose weight, I'm hardly eating anything. So I'm looking at this guy, I'm like, I'm afraid he's going to die. He's got heart disease, and he's a big guy, and plus he's an attorney. And so I'm saying, don't do all these things and just eat plant-based, and he dies, what's going to happen to me? I'm going to jail. And so I called Dr. Esselstyn up on the phone. And I said, I had a problem. I said, I got this guy. I said, and he's, he says he's doing everything. He's still having chest pain. And he looks at me, and he said, is he fat? And I said, yeah. He says, he's cheating. He said, he's cheating. And it's like, he says he's not. He's cheating. He says, does he eat out? And I said, maybe once a week. He said, that's 52 times a year. But you just don't, we get to the point where we don't notice. Have you ever, like Weight Watchers? Anybody ever done Weight Watchers?
Yeah, me.
Yeah, so the portions, right? A cup of this, so many points, cup of this, so many points, right? So after a while, you think you can eyeball it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so after you're done with that, you eyeball it.
Then the weight starts going.
Yeah, exactly. That's your eyeball it, We always talk in class about the peanut butter and the spoon, right? Tablespoon of peanut butter is 110 calories. So what's your tablespoon like? Nobody's looking, and then it's another one, But it's like my mother always says, I just ate this much. And it's like, they don't do portions like that, Mom. It's always just this portion. It's like, they don't make portions like that. I'm done. Questions?
Curious, these who have stressed not having oil in your food. Yet on most Mediterranean diets suggest you have, olive oil. What's the deal with olive oil?
Well, for the most part, for starters, olive oil is generally not olive oil. There's very little regulation to olive oil. And the benefits of olive oil depend on when you pick the olives, how they were processed, and what they were mixed with. And, so olive oil that Giuseppe made, on the farm is a lot different from the half gallon that you buy at Sam's.
Okay.
So for the most part, it's cut with seed oils. Olive oil, the makeup is basically mostly a monounsaturated fat, which is supposed to be less dangerous. It has a little bit of saturated fat. It does have a little bit of omega-6 fat, but monounsaturated fat has not been shown to cause as much cardiovascular disease. Does it reverse it? Depends. Doesn't really revert. Nobody's ever shown olive oil reverses disease, but it decreases cardiovascular incidence compared to other ways of eating. So if I compare smoking chocolate cigarettes to Marlboros, I might be able to say that the chocolate cigarettes are better than the Marlboros. Can I say it's a health food? Not necessarily. Follow me? So it's better than eating lard on your cooking with lard. Will it reverse disease? Probably not. Will it slow it? Possibly, maybe, if it's truly olive oil. The problem is when you take an olive and you squeeze it to get the yellow oil out, actually should be green if it's done right, then you've left the fiber and the nutrients behind and you just have this liquid. The liquid can hit those cells in your colon where that bacteria lives and causes an inflammatory reaction. So those people prone that have those bacteria may actually set off inflammation. So, for instance, we had a fellow that had rheumatoid arthritis. And, the crippling kind, his fingers were kind of bent, walked with a cane. And he had no rhythm problems, so that's how I got him to try to go plant-based. He comes in the office, and he's still having issues. And he's really not lost much weight. And they swore up and down they weren't eating any meat, they weren't eating any dairy. And it's like, and I'm kind of, scratching my head again, it's like they seemed like they weren't lying to me. Any more than anybody else does. And he said, me and my wife, we make this big pot of roasted vegetables. We put them on a cookie sheet, and then we put the oil on them. So Italians in Italy might use a tablespoon of olive oil for like the whole meal, but here we've got it in the pasta sauce. We've got it in the we're cooking with it. We're putting it in the whatever. It's everywhere. It's in your energy bar. It's everywhere. So we have so much more oil than somebody that put a little bit in the pan and, that was good that we had because it was so expensive, we have to cherish it. And actually the burn point of olive oil it shouldn't really be a cooking oil. It should be, at best, something that people, put on a salad or something for the most part, but it's not meant for high heat at all. It starts to oxidize, and we know oxidize causes inflammation. Again, starts that part. So, again, if we're trying to reverse disease, if your garage is spot clean, it's one thing. But if we're trying to take somebody that has chest pain, high blood pressure, and high cholesterol and turn back the clock, we need all hands on deck. So we can't keep going this way if we're trying to go this way. That's the reason.
Okay.
So you get the biggest bang for your buck if you can get it out with cooking. Now, is a little bit going to be what, takes you down? Probably not. So what I always say to these guys is like, so when you go out, you have no choice. You are at the mercy of that guy back there in the kitchen. And if you make them too angry, they're going to spit in your food. So you order what you can, but you have to realize you cannot control the situation. And you'll be a menace to your friends and family. Right? Nobody will have you over. Look how small this group is. You've already
Cooking with coconut oil?
Well, coconut is actually a medium chain triglyceride. So it actually behaves more like a saturated fat. And it has 9 calories per gram. So it's not a health food. It adds more calories to your food. So, and the thing is, can you get by without it? When I look at, if I want to lose weight, what can I eliminate that's not going to cause me grief? Right? So if I can't taste the oil in something, that's 9 calories per gram, and a tablespoon is 110 calories. And for weight loss, I'm just looking for about 250 in the negative a day, so I'm almost halfway there if I don't cook with oil. It's like cooking with oil is about 500 to 800 calories a day extra. So if you eliminate that, that's a great way to lose weight, and you don't affect the taste. So when I'm sauteing garlic and mushrooms, I just put a tiny bit of water and let them mushrooms generate water. Your greens will generate water. So you don't need it, so to speak. We're just used to it.
I want to gain weight.
Great,
So I'm supposed to keep moving and exercising. I'm just burning more calories. It feels like it's a battle.
So when you so the reality of it is exercise will not result in weight loss. I can train for a marathon and I can maintain calories. I won't lose any weight. Because I get hungry and I eat more. Sometimes it's a perception of what you're eating. So if I were trying to put weight on you, I would do more potatoes, more grains, more beans, more tofu, a larger meal. Most people grew up with a potato, a piece of meat, and a vegetable. So the plate fit on that, like that school lunch plate.
And gravy.
Yeah, but we look at a finite portion. What's a lot? Your perception of what's a lot and my perception of what a lot. But when I eat a salad, again, now I'm looking at this big. And some people can't. Some people just don't have the appetite. There are food-driven people, like, I want to eat till I'm full, or I got to make myself eat because I don't remember. Some people get, you have the feeling of getting full quicker. So it depends, but a large, so fruit and yogurts, things that are calorie dense, plant-based yogurts have a little bit more fat. If you're losing weight and your cholesterol is good, then we would add a little bit more. If you want to add avocado to you, those kind of things. We don't want to make you fat. We don't want to put weight on and just make you fat. My son-in-law is a strength and conditioning coach, and we always have the discussion. It's like, why are the shot putters so fat? Why do they have to be, I understand a center in football, they take up space, right? But the shot putter, you're spinning around. You think you'd like to be a little leaner, spin quicker. He said, well, the thing is, it's mass. You get it spinning, it's going to be a mass. It's a force to go around. So when you eat, if you're not putting muscle on, you're going to put fat on. So we don't really need to put fat on you. Do you want it? Insulation, not cold. I don't know. But you know what I mean? So I'd rather have something functional. Fat in and of itself is more inflammatory. People that are overweight have increased risk of cancer. Your heart has to pump the fat. You don't get any bang for your buck for it. So you're better off putting on a coat than putting on fat. So you'd rather put on muscle that you have more energy perhaps. And so that would be a different way of eating. But again, sometimes when people take the junk food out of their diet, there's not much left. You know what I mean?
A question for you about the fat avocado. When you need a lot of energy and you're training athletically, sometimes it's better to have that whole wheat toast with a little avocado on it before a practice or whatever than lean meat. It metabolizes faster, you've got the energy, and you're able to get through it faster. So where I'm a little concerned, I used to not eat fat, but you're starting to see, hey, it's better to have that piece of toast with the avocado than it is, the piece of meat or, the lean chicken.
The lean chicken won't, so you're going to draw energy for athletic performances from carbohydrates. You'll burn a little fat in the background, but you got that going for you already.
But you know what? It's interesting. I found with the carbohydrate, it doesn't stick with me.
You didn't know.
The protein, that protein seems to stick with
Gives
me.
you no energy whatsoever.
But it stays with me.
You didn't eat enough.
Okay.
You didn't eat enough. So a more complex carbohydrate may last longer, like oatmeal or something along those lines. Maybe the fat with adding chia seeds. But I got to tell you, I didn't think so either. When I first did all this, if you gave me a bowl of oatmeal, I say, that's all we have. No chocolate cake left. And then it's like, okay, I'll eat it, but I didn't see any brown sugar. Or okay, I'll try it with some dates and raisins. Okay, I can just eat it.
But with the oatmeal, I love oatmeal. I don't eat fat, and I did find that. But the energy, I have to eat tiny meals to make it through the different workouts. So I found that in between, when I'm traveling, it was neat to have the piece of bread, and I had hummus.
Hummus is great.
Okay, hummus.
Hummus is great. But it's not the fat or the protein that's driving you. It's the beans and the carbohydrates, and it breaks down more because there's fiber.
Okay.
So that'll delay the breakdown of the carbohydrate. And the more fit you are, the more your body's going to burn some background fat. So if you go out to exercise, and this is your muscle cell, the first thing that I'm going to run across the parking lot. I'm going to use energy, ATP, that I already have stored in the muscle cell. So I can get to the parking lot just using the energy that's already been made.
Yeah.
After that, I have to start using energy, converting carbohydrate to energy through a metabolic process. I can so my muscle cells have 2,000 calories of carbohydrate stored in them, and my liver have 200. I've got a little fat in the muscle, but not a tremendous amount. So that can break down in the background. But for the most part, for a muscle fiber to contract, it needs carbohydrate. You're not going to convince anybody running the mile to eat avocado and go do it.
Right.
They're going to do carbohydrate. After you go through, depending on the length of the activity, so after an hour, you start to deplete your carbohydrate stores. Your liver is there to keep your bloodstream glucose steady. So it keeps dishing out a little bit so your glucose doesn't go to 60 while you're running. We're going to use running for an example. So it'll spit out a little glucose just to keep your glucose around 90. So it only has 200 calories. It starts to go, you start to go through those 200 calories after about an hour. Your body's going to want some more. You're either going to have to slow down and drop your heart rate enough so that you can start to metabolize fat, because your heart rate has to be lower. It takes more oxygen to metabolize fat than carbohydrate. So that is the proverbial wall. So you have to slow things down and walk. You can metabolize some fat while you restore your carbohydrate stores somehow, and then you can go on. Protein does not play a role in that. I can do I just did a 12-hour race. So 50 miles in 12 hours. It didn't have, I'm trying to think if there was 5 grams of protein, 10 grams of protein in something that I may have eaten over the course of the day. I'm fine. After I was done, I had food that had protein in it. I wasn't trying to make up for the protein for that day, but I ate essentially all carbohydrates.
But you were doing it on a continuous basis. I'm talking about something like tennis, where you're playing 2 or 3 times a day, where it's sudden spurts at high intensity.
That's all carbohydrate. That's all carbohydrate. So you eat and you play. You eat and you play. When your heart
the problem is between the playing, you don't have the time to eat and what to.
I was running and had time to eat.
Yeah. what I find is when I play and I'm hot, I'm not hungry.
Well, then
I can't eat.
Right. So then you can take a liquid carbohydrate source, and that would get you through it.
Is that the one, the powdered one? Like
Yeah. Did you do the gnarly?
You do
Did you do
that.
the
Yeah.
gnarly or the tailwind?
Tailwind. That's the one I told you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those give you liquid calories to do your athletic event, and then when you're done, you eat real food. But you're not gonna process any protein. And if you eat fat, let's go back to the toast and the avocado. If you eat the avocado, you have to take it through your intestines, take it into your bloodstream. So get into the blood and then back into the muscle and then go through the metabolic process. It's not quick.
But for the heart thing, they one of the biggest things they say that avocado is so good for you, you should include it in your diet. I just started that. I was trying to add that in. Variety.
I mean, if your cholesterol's okay and your weight's not an issue, then a half avocado a day, I don't have a problem with it. I eat an avocado. I'm not a problem with it. But if you're looking for energy, that's a different question. So I would be more inclined to, I actually have my sourdough bread with some jam on it and a big bowl of fruit.
What I found was the energy bowl. I love that. With that, just it goes into your system. It doesn't seem to...
Have you ever had teff? Teff porridge?
No.
Teff is an ancient grain. It kind of looks like cocoa wheats. It's kind of wild, but it's a hardy grain. We used to do that before we did long bikes because it really sticks to you. It metabolizes very slowly. It's
Really?
teff, T-E-F-F. And we typically cook it, like you would oatmeal. It takes a little longer, but I put like dates, maybe a couple walnuts in there, and maybe chop up a banana on it. Try that because it really lasts a long time. He's looking at us. Are we going to get kicked out? Or? I don't know.
No, you're not going to get
we're
kicked
gonna-
out, but I think you have an appointment or something.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We're
well,
gonna go cheat.
it's dinner out.
So we're talking about
Says out
food.
loud.
And now you get hungry talking about the whole food.
Enjoy it, right?
So I was just going to say with like protein, I always thought like if I eat protein, I feel fuller.
There's a satiety involved in that, but both fat and protein will cause you to feel fuller. Yes,
Doesn't
more
mean
full.
that it's giving you the nutrition.
No, it makes you feel fuller and perhaps a
Because
little bit
there's
longer.
problems with the heat and humidity, and if you're playing several times through the day where you're not able to refuel, you get this glazed look. And
That's a carbohydrate deficiency. That's a glycogen loss.
Yeah.
So you just need more carbohydrates. It's not a protein thing.
Well, I had that turkey sandwich. I took a bite of it and I felt better.
That's because of the bread.
Okay.
So when you're saying carbohydrates, you can just have all the vegetables you want all day long. That would be a good thing.
Yes?
I love
Yeah.
So how do you help your patients navigate this world of planning and knowing what to do? Because I have a lot of information on this, and we've been doing it. I've been playing around with it for a long time, and I still struggle with, oh God, what am I going to eat for dinner? And there's always rice around. There's always whole grain pasta around, and some sauce that's decent.
Your go-to meals. We have go-to meals. And actually we have you can do a menu board. We find it helpful. So if you write 7 items for dinner down, and then you can rearrange them obviously. So you have them and you can shop for them accordingly. But, my mom's Italian, so there's probably going to be an Italian night. So that might be a pasta of sort, with prima, with vegetables or whatever, maybe a sauce, depends on. We, an easy, really quick night, greens, sweet potato, beans. We do a burrito night. So we made our fajita night. So I'll saute some vegetables. We'll have beans and rice. I make a tortilla, out of corn masa. We do pizza night. We have a soup night. So once a week we have soup, whether it be a pho, a potato soup, a chili, bean soup, something, mock chicken soup of some sort. We usually do that. And then I do all the cooking in my house, so I kind of like to repurpose things, So I made a lasagna Sunday night, and I'm going to have it tonight. I made a lentil loaf on Monday. We had lentil loaf sandwiches with, I can't remember what we had with us, salad or whatever, another night. So I repurpose it, so I don't have to cook every night.
And what are your lunches?
My lunches are usually, could be leftovers, but my favorite lunch is some variation of a large salad. So it's usually, 2 big handfuls of greens, and then and it's usually a whole pepper and a whole cucumber. And then I may do my Mexican salad, which is salsa, avocado, and rice, and maybe beans. I may do my sushi salad, which is some nori, rice, avocado, ginger. I might do a Caesar salad version of that, with maybe a yogurt type dressing. Again, those vegetables. But there's usually, we do a quinoa and sweet potato version of a salad. So some sort of salad I usually do at lunch, and then a piece of fruit. So that's almost all. Or, like I said, leftovers. Today was leftovers and greens. So that's typically.
Like if you have a dish, like this is what I usually do, is if say I have a dish that's going to include quinoa, I make more quinoa.
Yes.
Because then I have it in the fridge and we put it in our salad or on a sandwich or whatever.
Or you can use that for your base. So if I have rice, I always make extra rice. So I could use it for my salad, or I could use it in a dish so I didn't have to get the Instant Pot out to make the rice the next time. If I make beans, I always make extra, so we might have fajitas and then we might have bean soup. So I try to make it easier, but it's kind of taking it's finding the recipes that you really enjoy. We like a recipe that we call cabbage unrolled. It's with gnocchi, the potato, cabbage and sauerkraut and white beans, and then we do the sauce, so to speak, is either tomato, or I turn it into kind of a stroganoff where I'll do a mushroom and a little bit of a cream sauce with it. And that's usually made of cashew. Pardon me?
Go eat now.
Yeah. So that's something that we have, that would be something that we would have, like a 10-day rotation, so to speak.
Yeah, so just plan that out.
Yeah, you just find what you like. We do, I do a crabless cake, so if we do a crabless cake, we do a baked potato and, some greens. I find, it's funny, when air fryers first came out, I was like, no, don't use them, don't buy them, they're awful, they heat food up greater than 425 degrees, they generate acrylamides and they're going to cause cancer. Well, now they you don't have to heat things up, you can do 385. As long as you keep your vegetables under 400, really, you don't generate acrylamides, which are carcinogens. But I like to take that little air fryer, since a lot of night, and I'll cut a sweet potato in half, put it in there 30 minutes, it's the best sweet potato you ever had. Spaghetti squash, I put that in the air fryer, put it one of the flat ones, it's so quick. My tofu, I'll make a little bit of a batter, seasoned batter, put that in there. It's good. Last night we did a cauliflower tofu, and then actually I had mashed potatoes left, so I made potato cakes. Put a little kale and onions in there and just dry fried them in a pan. So it's just doing things that you find you like and that you don't have to read a 20-page recipe for.
Right, but then you also commented earlier, you have to eat enough food because
Yes.
you're eating low-calorie density food. I can eat a huge plate of food that is really good for me, but then in 2 hours I'm looking for a snack, and it's usually something that's not.
So you got to make sure you have the potatoes or the grain in that, and you have to make sure that you have the beans, that you're eating an adequate portion. Because again, we're used to looking at this, the Weight Watcher portion, not this. And so my dessert, my go-to almost every night of the week.
Chocolate cake.
No, I take a jar, a mason jar that must be a pint size, and I dice up a frozen banana, put that in the bottom. Then I put a tablespoon of cacao powder, and then I fill the rest of the jar with frozen blueberries or a combo of blueberries, strawberries, mango, and then I fill that jar about halfway full with soy milk, and I sit there with a spoon while I'm watching my hour of TV, and I make soft serve. And I'm happy as a clam. I think I have ice cream. Tastes like ice cream. I got chocolate. Cacao powder's unprocessed. It's a bean. It has antioxidants, phytonutrients. I got a banana. I got blueberries. Good for my brain. I think I'm having ice cream someplace along the road, and I'm happy.
And you're working it.
I'm working it. It doesn't go down like that little piece of chocolate cake. So it takes a bit. So I do that almost. So the only thing I vary, sometimes it's frozen cherries, sometimes it's a combo, sometimes it's blueberries. And I get the soy milk. Soy milk has anti-cancer properties. It's anti-prostate, anti-breast cancer, anti-hot flash. So if anybody has hot flashes, soy milk before you go to bed will alleviate those.
So no coconut milk.
Almond milk is out there.
You can use almond milk, the lower fat variety. I like so how do I prevent breast cancer? That's the biggie, right? 1 in 8 women get breast cancer. So normal body mass index, exercise, avoiding dairy. And then what can I eat? Mushrooms have the same anti-cancer properties as a tamoxifen. All right, so mushrooms are very anti-cancer. And soy, anti-estrogen, so estrogen blocker. So that's why we eat mushrooms several times a week, and I have soy milk. That's why I choose it. But if you hate soy milk and you like almond,
I have a question. Sometimes soy can have gluten, right?
Soy sauce can have gluten because they use wheat to ferment it. But soy milk is just soybeans and water.
Okay, thank you.
Need to go.
Okay. What about like oat milk?
You can do oat milk. There's a company called Malk, M-A-L-K, that makes oat milk with just oat water and a little bit of salt. But the other oat milk, you have to look to make sure they don't put a bunch of oil and processed stuff in them. If there's a paragraph of ingredients in something, I don't, it's like that, I don't know what to do with more gum in my garage. I'm sure it won't hurt me that bad, but how much of it do I really need?
Do you find people get scared and that what pushes them over to this type of lifestyle?
I think people are afraid that, one, it might work, and then I'm stuck. And two, it's that guilty thing. That
they're guilted into it?
Yeah, you're guilted into it, but it's almost like, you don't want to be that fringe person. Everybody knows that person that goes to the restaurant. It's like, I like this, but hold this, hold that, do this, I can't have that, please don't do this. Nobody wants to be that guy. Because pretty soon you're eating alone. So I think that's an issue. And then the how, because again, I can go, and I'm sure you're, once you're used to it. So I'm not going to throw you under the bus, but where are you going to dinner tonight? So you would think Italian restaurant, you should be able to pull that off, right? Pasta marinara sauce. My God, you should be able to do it. It's full of oil. That's the problem. But they don't have to do it that bad. But if you get a marinara sauce, it's going to be better than you don't do the cheese, right? So if you don't do the
Better than veal something.
right? If you don't do veal, if you don't do the eggplant or whatever type of thing, you're getting it. But you are going to get oil, and it's going to be,
Right.
and it's like people are used to seeing that.
Yeah.
I can even go to the Outback and probably get less oil because I get a baked potato and the salad, and the vegetables. I can get by there.
The
sides. I went to Burn's Steakhouse and ordered a bunch of sides. They hated me there. They gave me a bunch of saucers. Like I had 6 saucers with sides on it. But you can usually, Thai food is a place you can always find something. You might get a little coconut milk with it. But Mexican food, sometimes, there's lard of beans. Like, what's the new place we've got here? Chipotle.
Yeah, Chipotle.
So their tortilla shell's got a lot of salt in it. But if you do like the bowl, it's not bad.
Bowl is good.
Yeah, the bowl's good. You can get all those sides, and that works. So most of those places you can work around. Is it as good as? But you can. I don't know why. Most sauces, because they come in the giant, vats and they're full of oil type of thing. But it's like we make great sauce. My mom's Italian. We make stuffed shells. I make the filling with like a little cashew, but mainly silken tofu, spinach, allspice, garlic, lemon. I mean, I have people in my house, they do not know it's not ricotta. And so they could do it, but they don't want to do it because it's not quick and easy. That's all.
It's hard though socially to figure out where you're.
Well, you don't want to get, if you're the guy that wants the big giant steak hanging off the plate, and you look over and you're having a salad, you kind of feel bad. Hope you enjoyed a little different format and some interaction with some people on their early plant-based journey. One of the things I wanted to add as far as the calcium score, there was a recent article that came out looking at people taking statins, and they looked at the calcification in the arteries, and the claim to fame was that the statins helped to regress coronary plaque, and they also noted that there was an increase in calcium associated with the statin or with the regression of plaque. And, it was a kind of a light bulb for me because, again, when we look at athletes that are endurance athletes running ultras, they tend to have more calcification, but less vascular complications, less heart attacks, less strokes. So, again, it adds more credence to the fact that calcified plaques are stable plaques. And whatever we can do to stabilize the plaque, be it a medication that has some side effects or prolonged exercise, is a good way around, or it actually should provide confidence that these plaques are stable and we don't need to go sticking stents in them or bypassing them. And but I thought it was very interesting. They argued a little bit about what procedure was best at looking at the calcium, whether intravascular ultrasound or calcium or cardiac CT. They also argued about what the calcium looks like. But, I think the end result is that if people have less events and they have more calcium, great. It's a sign of healing rather than a sign that bad things are going to happen. So A lot of it's in the company that it keeps. Obviously, if you have a high calcium score and you have a poor diet, you're going to have soft plaques that can crack. So you need to change your diet. So my recommendation is always going to be eat a whole foods, plant-based diet and exercise, no matter if you have a calcium score of 0 or you have a calcium score of 500. Again, I hope you enjoyed the podcast. Thanks for listening. Be back next week with a regular episode. Thank you.